Letters to My Grandchildren, The Red Kite, Episode Number 3, Chapter 3 of the book Betel Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio Jr. It was the summer of 1956, the kite season in Borobot's neighborhood on Pipini Street in Sampaloc, Manila. Neighborhood boys flew their kites on the corner of Laonglaan and Pipini Streets. The large intersection offered much wider space and broader access to the sky. The most common, but not necessarily most popular kites, were the ready-made ones sold for 10 cents each at the corner sari-sari store which Beho, a Chinese man, owned. They were made of thin, colored paper called papel de Japón, Japanese paper, pasted on a thin bamboo frame. Those who didn't have 10 cents, which was quite beyond the reach of most children at that time, had to make kites of their own using old newspapers. Occasionally, some kids would make an extra large kite, a gurion. A gurion was so large that the string connecting the kite had to be extra thick. The force of the air pushing up on a gurion was so strong it would break a regular thread. A regular kite with a thick string or thread would have difficulty soaring high up in the sky. Small boys like Borobot, however, did not have the skill to fly a regular kite. Hence, they made their boca boca, a kite made of a piece of regular sized bond paper which was folded twice on both sides and attached with strings. Flying it was difficult. The small boys had to run while holding the long string of the boca boca. Once they stopped running, the boca boca would cease to soar and instead fall on the ground. As long as their boca boca would go up, the small boys did not tire of running back and forth on the street. Seeing it, seeing it soar was thrilling enough. The older boys, however, got a thrill not only from flying their kites high, but also from competing to see which kite had the sharper thread. Sharpening a thread involved several steps. First, a used light bulb was placed inside a can and crushed into grainy pieces by pounding it with a stone pestle. A cup of starch along with pieces of the light bulb were then placed in a big can of boiling water. The concoction was continuously stirred and then cooled off. The thread was then shrunk to several posts like a clothesline. The cold mixture was applied on the thread and once dried, the thread was rolled into an empty can. The kite with the sharpened thread would be ready for combat. Two kites were flown in the competition. Once high enough, both flyers would try to make the strings of the kites touch each other. If there was contact, the competitors would release more string to make the kite soar higher. In the dogfight, the kite with a sharper thread would win, cutting the other string and releasing the losing kite into the sky. Upon contact, if one pulled his string instead of letting it go, his string would likely break and he would lose the competition. The kite with the broken thread would fly up and eventually fall on the ground. The boys would go after it, follow it from one street to another, and try to snap it when low is low enough. The one who got it would get a kite for himself. That was the unwritten rule of the game. That summer, a red kite flown by Buning was earning quite a reputation as a perennial winner. Buning was a 13-year-old whose father, Mangustin, was the handyman of Borobot's grandmother. They belonged to the Bisayan clan living in the middle of Pipini Street with Aling Yayang as their matriarch. Later on, when he was in his 20s, Buning became a ranger in the army and was killed in Mindanao during a raging war with Muslim rebels in the 1970s. Buning's Red Kite had already notched up several victories, breaking the previous summer's record of five. Almost everybody was afraid to compete with him and would rather compete against each other. His latest victory went to Boning's head. He became arrogant, mocking his defeated competitor. Go back to your house in Dos Castillas, he told him, referring to the street 4 blocks away. There's no way you can beat me. The insult didn't sit well with the boy's younger brother, who vowed to get even. The brother, a dorky 10-year-old, came back a week later with a kite on hand and challenged Boning. The news spread like a wildfire. The neighborhood boys trooped to the corner of Laonglaan and Pipin Street to witness the battle of the kites. Finally, somebody was willing to compete against Buning. Buning was cocky. It may have seemed like a token challenge since the boy didn't look like a formidable opponent, but beating him would enable Buning to obtain his record-breaking eighth victory. I'm going to beat you, the brash 10-year-old challenger taunted Buning. In turn, Buning was determined to teach the young kid a lesson. He was like Muhammad Ali when he carried former champion Floyd Patterson through several rounds before knocking him out. Patterson had insisted on calling him his given name of Cassius Clay, not his adopted Muslim moniker. This angered Muhammad Ali, and he took his revenge in the ring. Buning didn't have any difficulty flying his red kite. In an instant, it soared high. The challenger failed to do the same. It took him a while before he was able to fly his kite as high as Buning's. When their strings touched, Buning's arrogance prevailed, and he pulled away. He maneuvered his kite through several moves, letting it soar upward by pulling back the string and soar downward and up again by pulling the string in a circular motion. When the strings touched the second time, he repeated the steps. He planned to execute the kill the third time around. However, his kite dipped too low and it went under an electric wire. When it went up, it again dipped under the same wire, completely entangling the string. Buning panicked. He didn't know what to do since it was the first time it happened to him. In his anxiety, he pulled the string hard, hard enough to break it. Everyone was shocked. The red kite continued to fly, its, its string entangled in the wire. At long last, Buning lost. The dorky boy with eyeglasses was the winner, defeating the seven-time champion and frustrating his attempt for an eighth record-breaking win. Buning was too shocked to say anything as he looked up at the soaring sky. He could not do anything but watch since it was already beyond his control. The new champion brought down the kite, his own kite, and walked back home together with his cheering companions. It was their turn to mock Buning. They took the imaginary championship crown from Pipin Street and brought it home to their street in Dos Castillas. Through the rest of the afternoon and early evening, Buning and some boys kept looking at the red kite, waiting for the wind to die down and for the kite to fall to the ground, or at least low enough so they could grass seat, but it did not. Buning, kakain na. Buning, it's time to eat, his sister called. His family was calling him home for supper. One by one, the rest of the boys heard their families call for them for dinner until no one was left to watch over the kite. As he lay in the bed that evening, Borobot was still thinking about the red kite. It was still a champion kite, he thought, for it did not actually lose the competition but lost on a technicality. He was fantasizing he would wake up early in the next morning and try to retrieve the kite before anybody else got up. Once he got the magical kite, he would fly it himself, complete, compete against other boys, and become the new champion. He was deep into this reverie when suddenly thunder roared and a downpour of rain came down. He uttered a loud scream. "Oh no!" he cried. "What happened?" His mother rushed to his room in a panic and asked him. Embarrassed, he meekly answered, "Nothing. It's just the rain. It's just the rain pouring down." Borobot did not tell her about the red kite getting wet and destroyed by the rain. She would not understand. Subscribe to, share, and like this channel. Letters to my grandchildren, audiobooks, and hit the notification bell to get episodes update. You just read The Red Kite, Chapter 3 of the book Beetle Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio Jr. Episode number 3 of the YouTube channel Letters to My Grandchildren audiobook, a collection of easy to read and interesting stories, mostly autobiographical, the author hopes to pass on to his grandchildren. Published by Papyrus Book and Audiobooks. To contact us, send us an email message for papyrusbook at yahoo.com. Next episode of Ducks and Pebbles.